So we're going to answer this question. The question of why some Latin American countries didn't need military dictatorships to confront the communist threat during the Cold War can be answered in a clear way. The countries that I showed, that was Uruguay, Costa Rica, and Venezuela, these countries had stronger civilian institutions, political agreements, historical conditions that allowed them to manage conflict without giving power to the military. During the Cold War, the United States saw Latin America as a key region to stop communism, especially after the revolution in Cuba in 1959. In many countries, this fear led to military coups, dictatorships. However, Costa Rica, Venezuela, and Uruguay confronted this situation or this threat in a very different way. Costa Rica represents the strongest case of a country that didn't need military dictatorships because it removed the military from politics completely. After the Civil War of 1948, led by Jose Figueres Ferrer, the country created a new constitution. In 1949, they abolished the army and transferred the power to Otilio Olate. This was a decisive moment. By eliminating the army, Costa Rica prevented a military intervention because it could become a solution before it could even become a solution to the communist threat. During the Cold War, Costa Rica remained anti-communist, and in 1955, it defended itself against an invasion supported by Nicaragua. However, unlike many other Latin American countries, it didn't respond by creating a military dictatorship. Costa Rica had the most stable system because the military was not longer a political actor. Venezuela followed a different but an important path because instead of eliminating the army, it limited its political role through democratic agreements. Because after the fall of the dictatorship of Marco Pérez Jiménez in 1958, Venezuela entered a democratic period based on the Punto Fijo Pact, an agreement between major political parties to respect elections and to share the power. Share power. In 1959, Romulo Betancourt became president. He was both left-wing and anti-communist president, which is important because it shows that opposition to communists didn't require military dictatorship. During 1960s, Venezuela faced guerrilla movements and influence from Cuba that even in 1961 it broke relationships with Cuba. However, instead of turning to a military role, Venezuela used elections, reforms, and political negotiation to maintain stability. So Venezuela didn't remove the army, but it were trying to keep this political order or these democratic institutions after the dictatorships that they faced before of this pact that was made by the major political parties and avoided institutional collapse. And yeah, so yeah, Uruguay provides a more complex and very important case because Uruguay was one of the most democratic and stable countries in Latin America, with strong institutions and influenced by leaders such as José Batlle y Ordóñez. In 1951, it created a collective executive system, showing that its commitment to democratic governance. However, in 1950s and 1960s, Uruguay faced some challenges, including economic decline, inflation, social unrest, the rise of Tupamara, Tupamaros, a leftist guerrilla group that increased the political violence. By the early 1970s, civilian institutions were weakened, and in 1973, the military took power, establishing a dictatorship that lasted until 1985. Uruguay is a very important case because it shows that military dictatorships were not necessary at the beginning, but became possible when democratic institutions weakened. So basically, this shows that when this, Costa Rica avoided this outcome by eliminating the army. Venezuela avoided it by trying to maintain these political agreements. And Uruguay, however, shows that when these conditions fail, military intervention can happen. This makes Uruguay like a very important case for this.